Jeff Bachman is a professional lecturer in human rights and the co-director of the Ethics, Peace, and Global Affairs program at the School of International Service at American University. And we have a good event I know about coming up there in September that I hope he'll mention as well. Jeff Bachman.
Thank you. I want to just first thank all of you for being here. Thank David for inviting me, and Andy for hosting this. So, taking a little bit of a different spin than, that's right, we're a different turn on focusing on the victims of war. And so, war is absolute. As Billy finds in Slaughterhouse-Five, unlike video footage that captures the destructive nature of war, the actual destruction caused war cannot be rewound, it cannot be undone. Those who were killed stay dead. Children who lost parents children who lost parents stay orphans, and parents who lost children continue to mourn. War by its very nature removes the autonomy of some as decided by others. As has been witnessed in every single war ever fought throughout history, all of which, despite what they tell us, are wars of choice, people die. Further, the destructive nature of war is not and cannot be limited to those who we refer to as quote-unquote combatants. War equates to the widespread and arbitrary deprivation of life, the most egregious of human rights violations, and a violation of the human right from which all other human rights stem. As Howard Zinn wrote soon after the destruction of Afghanistan began in 2001, quote, "Is it really an accident when civilians die under our bombs? Even if you grant that the intention is not to kill civilians, if they nevertheless become victims again and again and again, can that really be called an accident?" Civilians are not killed accidentally in war, and apologies are meaningless because no apology can bring back the innocent people killed. And when one apologizes over and over again for the same transgression, the apology loses whatever meaning it may have had. In her book, In a Different Voice, feminist ethicist Carol Gilligan described the web of relationships. She wrote of how damage to one or more strands of this web creates greater stress on the web as a whole, as well as the parts of this web most damaged. When considering how war arbitrarily deprives individuals of their lives within the context of the web of relationships, we can more fully understand the consequences of war. For every person whose life has been arbitrarily taken, the impact reaches everyone else connected to that person's web. That person's family affects the very communities to which that person belongs. I tell my students, many of whom aspire to be in government, in slightly different terms than this, that I have no interest in working for an institution that operates as if we're a puppeteer. No one should have the power to decide whose lives are expendable. No one should get to decide that some people's lives, theirs included of course, are of more value than the lives of others. Not a single person should be arbitrarily taken from their families and their communities. That these beliefs and values that I described are central to who I am has led me to periodically question whether I can work for another institution, the Academy, when many of the scholars that populate the Academy justify the, quote, wars of necessity and house themselves in the ever-expanding, quote, security-based disciplines. I remember an event leading up to the, when President Obama declared the red line had been crossed in Syria. We had two sort of competing events at American University, competing in the sense that one was taking a very different approach than the other. I had a debate about the moral and legal and human consequences of intervention in Syria, and there was another event where one of the guests spoke of it as if it was happening in a vacuum. Actually said to the audience, I have students here and we can talk about IR theory in relationship to the bombing of Syria. That's one of the things I think about scholarship, that unfortunately acts as if these kinds of things are happening as if it's not affecting real people. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. So, I've also been told on multiple occasions scholars should not be activists, and that they should only support student initiatives rather than join with students who are seeking to effect progressive change. The punchline would be to say something like, quote, fortunately, I'm not a scholar, but that's not exactly true. I am a scholar. As David knows from a paper I recently sent him, being a scholar sometimes means evaluating and analyzing policies, in this case drone attacks, in a way that can make someone feel unclean, which it did to me. Just as I railed against treating people as expendable, I evaluated drone attacks under international humanitarian law's principle of proportionality in order to demonstrate that even when using the most liberal of legal principles pertaining to the laws of war, the drone attacks still violate international law. But yet, in doing so, I also lent credibility to the idea that some lives are legally expendable when waging war. At least that's what the laws of war tell us. But I'm also an activist, and academic institutions provide a unique space for activists, young and old. And I believe that not only can scholars be activists, but that we must be activists. We work for privileged institutions, and we are a privileged group. It is the privileges that this institution and this work provide that can be used to promote progress. With our privilege comes a responsibility to use our research, to use the platform our job provides, to facilitate the translation of thought into action. And that is why I'm working with students, staff, and faculty to organize a series of events, one of which David referred to this fall, under the theme Human Rights, Activism, and Awareness Week. Each of the events will be connected to an ongoing campaign. I'm also working with students and staff and faculty to launch what we are calling the U.S. Foreign Policy Activist Co-op. This co-op will continue to work on issues discussed and acted on during Human Rights Week, as well as the numerous other issues related to U.S. foreign policy. On September 2nd, our first event of the week, we will celebrate International Day of Peace, which is September 21st. David and Andy will both be joining us for that, and these events are open to the public, and we hope that you can join us as well. Other topics for the week include reframing U.S. foreign policy to promote and respect human rights, the war on whistleblowers. There will be an event on drones and an event on human rights in the occupied territories. As I said, all the events are open to the public. If I did want to have a brochure or a flyer to hand out, but wasn't able to get them together. I do have some cards if you are interested in learning more about any of these events. Please just let me know. Thank you.
It is invaluable to have advocates of peace and sanity in academia with so much money flowing in from the military-industrial complex.